Hello everyone, how are you doing? Are you knackered yet? No. You're not? Whew. Wow, okay. We'll soon see about that. Right, precariously placed glass. I'm going to go through this at quite a pace. I'm going to try and stay here so that you can see the slides. We're going to do this in 15 minutes. The slides will be available. Don't feel like you have to scribble notes. I am on Twitter if you have any questions. So let's start. Quick introduction about persuasive copy. Oh, I should tell you, today I'm going to be talking with you about how to apply web psychology principles to help make your content go, well, not necessarily viral, but the things that you can do to help engage people more. So we're going to look at copy, engaging images, what makes for viral videos, and then quick key takeaways at the end. Are you game? Good, right, so introduction. That's me. This is all you need, really. Tweet me with any of your questions. That's the book. These are some of the people I've worked with. Web psychology, I termed the phrase in 2011 and defined as the empirical study of how our online environments like websites and apps and newsletters and social platforms, how all of these environments influence our attitudes and our behaviors. Essentially, the reason I created this field is because it's a practical psychological toolkit to help you make more persuasive environments such as websites and apps and user experiences. And it draws from a whole plethora of different fields of psychology, of human-computer interaction. You've got behavioral economics, neuroaesthetics, the list goes on. Essentially, in a nutshell, it's about enabling you to understand the context of the people that you are targeting. So there's universal psychological principles, things like the need to belong, to feel loved, to have our needs met by other people. Then you branch into the wider cultural context of people. So, for instance, what's the difference between the motivations of users who are living in Germany versus Shanghai versus England? And then if we're talking about England, what's different about people living in, I don't know, let's say Liverpool versus London? And then if we're looking at the culture of London, what's different between North London versus South London? Or within an organization, you can start to break it down into silos. So the psychological context of groups of people, how that influences our behaviors online. Then if you want to go even one further, which is the area that I'm very interested in, you start looking at individual differences, which we've started to have a little bit of a look at today earlier when we looked at visual DNA and Ocean, the big 5 traits. In all the research that I did for the book, and I'm apologizing if you've heard this before, I found that really there were 3 key things that people did to be successful online. So there are 3 secrets to online success. Number 1, know who you're targeting. That's about the universal, cultural, and individual differences, psychographics, of your specific audience or audiences. Once you understand that, you can then use psychological principles to inform how you communicate with those people. So things like, okay, so this kind of splits into 2 camps. So things like, what is the body language that I'm using in this video relaying to the customers that I'm reaching? Am I attracting an audience which is in a very masculine society? If so, how does the body language of the female versus the male presenter have to differ in order to be more persuasive for that audience, for instance? So on the one hand, it's things like body language, mirroring the language that you're using verbally, the expressions that you might use, the clothes that you might wear, all of these things that are non-verbal, mostly non-verbal, subconscious cues to get people to trust you and feel like they can establish a rapport. On the other side of communicating persuasively, you have adapting whatever it is that is your core message to the channel that you're disseminating it through. So if your core message is, well, use me as an example. I believe that knowledge is only useful if it's applied and only valuable if it's shared. Okay, so in that case, if that's my core value, and I have the idea that I want to be open with people, I'm going to dress and talk in such a way that hopefully you will trust me. In terms of like content and platform, that will be on Twitter, it'll be a bit more jokey, a bit more informal. On LinkedIn, it might be more professional. On Facebook, it might be more image-driven. So deciding what kind of medium will be best for your content. The third and final secret to being successful online is using psychological persuasion principles to sell with integrity. Now, this bit's really important. We've heard a couple of times today, or I think actually only once, about the difference between persuasion and, in the presentation, it was in coercion. But when you are persuading people, you've got to be very careful about what your intention is. What's the reason that you are using these principles to direct people to a certain behavior? Is it that you want them to buy more of your stuff just so you can get rich? Are you going to manipulate and violate them? Or is it through mutual benefit, wanting them to come away with something good so that they become longer-term advocates of your business? I would always, again, advise towards the latter. So let's jump into persuasive copy. How many of you are in marketing and have heard of this ratio, 80-20 ratio? Now, I was told by marketers at the Content Marketing Association that most people think, well, okay, we've got all these links, we've got to get people to click on the links and then they get to the content. So the link is really important. So now in the digital age, online, 80% on the headline, 20% on the content. It doesn't work. People get seriously pissed off if you spend all your time creating a copy or a headline that simply doesn't deliver. Which is why you have to start by thinking about the content first, but then you also have to think, would this make me want to read on? Is there a curiosity gap here? What's going on? So in order to get people to read your copy, which should be where the gold is, you need some kind of a hook. You all know this anyway. So today I've got 9 steps, sort of psychological steps, I suppose, for you to be able to create persuasive headlines. These are all on my SlideShare account. You can access these and use this as a template for your own campaigns. Number 1, understand your target. We've already talked about that. What are their needs? Why are they coming to your website? If it's a website like BuzzFeed, are you using intrinsic motivators? Is it going to be, I feel bored, or I feel lonely, I want something to make me laugh? What's the emotional state with which they're coming to your content, and what's their pain that you're addressing? We've already heard about personas. A really useful writing tip that I was giving when I was writing the book was to write as if you're writing to one person. So instead of however many of us are in this room, I'd say, okay, well, I'm going to think it's a fairly homogeneous bunch. You're all fairly smart. We're interested in psychology and the behavioral sciences. I'll imagine that you are a 35-year-old male wearing a check shirt, a bit hipster, interested in behavioral psychology, and I'll write to you and I'll call you Mitch. Okay. What it does, from my perspective as a writer, is it enables me to create something which is a lot more personal. Write the outline of your copy first and then the headline. This will make sure that your headline has substance. Psychological trigger words, which are in a couple of slides' time. Try different headlines first and then read them aloud, because the way that you write and the way that you speak are quite different. You may come up with something quite different if you speak it out. Pick the number 1 benefit and include it in headlines. If you're doing something which is software as a service or something intangible, make it tangible. What thing are you helping people solve? Include the product and the problem. That's the same thing. And then I know this sounds, I always cringe when I have this one up, but this really helps you to kind of create something that's going to be outside of the realm of what you usually do. And often, this is the thing that when you split test your headlines will be the one that wins. Last point, split test. Okay, so trigger words. Try these next time you send out a tweet or you put a thing on Facebook. So things like weird, strange, bizarre. My favorite. Okay, 1 weird tip to prolong your orgasm. It's not what you think. You're like, well, what is it? Like, is it rubbing the spines of an urchin? Like, you have no idea what it's going to be. These are really useful trigger words that you can use that will trigger people to read on. Quick case study. BuzzFeed. Has everyone uses BuzzFeed, right? Okay, everyone does, okay. So, example, 10 surprising facts about the Hunger Games. This is very relevant. You've got things you do online that would be creepy in real life. So these are trigger words: creepy, random, okay, breast-related inventions. How many of you have breasts in this room? I do. How many of you like breasts but don't have them? Right, so that's relevant to all of us, okay? So everyone's going to respond to that. Another thing, like Upworthy, they create something which is a negatively charged emotional headline, which then gives you an uplifting story. So you get the hook, the negative headline, and then an uplift association with the brand. A kid says something to a teacher that no one should have to experience. It's something that creates that kind of curiosity. This one, the Dalai Lama has some very uplifting and wise words about farting. He doesn't. The reason I put this in here, if you check on it on Upworthy, he talks about all this wise stuff, which is fine, I like a bit of wisdom, but not when you're looking to get your boredom relieved. And then he just talks about how he farts in planes. There are no wise words about farting, so I felt quite disappointed. Okay, anyway, so be audacious, promise your reader something valuable, dare them to read your article, but you have to be able to deliver. You can be bold, you can be seductive, you can be provocative, but you have to make sure that you can deliver every single time, otherwise you'll create a sense of distrust. There is a formula that you can use to write persuasive headlines. Take a number or a trigger word, then an adjective, then a keyword, then you insert a promise, and you end up with a killer headline. So what does this actually look like? Okay, imagine that I'm writing about frying eggs. This is my subject. And I could either write something like how to fry an egg or why I love frying eggs. How many of you like eggs? Like, yeah, they're nice. Okay, how many of you really love eggs? Oh, well, we have some egg lovers in the crowd. All right. Okay, so all the rest of you is like 90. That's quite odd. Right, so here, the formula. 13 unbelievable ways you can fry a small egg with a sock. I made it up. I was just using the formula. Thing is, even if you don't like eggs, 13 unbelievable ways you can fry a small egg with a sock. Suddenly you're like, okay, well, fry an egg, how do I normally fry an egg? And then if it's a small egg, is it a quail's egg? And then what kind of sock would you use? And wouldn't that be really stinky if it's like your boyfriend's sock? And your mind starts doing all these weird things in relation to something which is a really boring subject. It works. It gets people interested in something that they might otherwise not pay attention to. Which is why things like this work. So 50 weirdest things in all 50 states. You've got a number, you've got a trigger word, which is weirdest, and then 50 states, it applies to everyone in the states. Engaging images. Okay. The reason that images are so seductive and the reason why they work peripherally on websites, even though our attention is focused typically in the center of the page, is because they're really data rich and they're visually compelling and our brains take in information most quickly in a visual format. So if your images want to be persuasive, you have to do 3 key things. Number 1, elicit emotion. The main emotions, anger, fear, happiness, disgust, surprise, and sadness. Disgust is by far and above the least utilized online. It's also one of the most powerful. It's also the reason why, if you're eliciting emotion, if you get incongruence, things like this are really popular. So it's first world problems. How many of you have seen this? Yeah, okay, so you've got someone who's obviously deep in despair, and then you've got the tweet, a swan just spat in our salsa. Like, how despairing really is he going to be about that? Another one, had to wake up for the ironing lady to come and collect our clothes, and she still isn't here. Oh my God, you have such a terrible life. And then things like this, memes. One does not simply pull the flush at 4 a.m. or stay strong, weekend is coming soon. The reason that these are so powerful is because they utilize sort of the state of emotion. They pair it up with an image, so you get an instant sense of what it's about, and then you get the funny punchline, which is in the text. You have to be able to tell a story. Now, this is much easier than you might think. The Washington Post recently, or a few months ago, released a website called Know More, so K-N-O-W, More. And what they did was take a visual format or approach to telling stories. This particular montage is basically just 6 images which are really, really similar. It's practically the same image. But what they've done is the Pope hugging a man who's got, I think it's fibromyalgia. Anyway, the point is, because they've done it in a sequence, your brain reads that as if it's a story. So you want to know more. You want to know how it ends. There is no story. It's just the same image repeated with a couple of changes. But they've done it in a way that's more persuasive. Creating a curiosity gap. Things you do, or things kids do that would be creepy if an adult did them. How many of you were kids at one point? How many of you are adults now? Right, okay, so this is going to apply to all of us. There's a curiosity gap that's universal. There's an example of someone who does it where it didn't actually quite work. So guess which car your state likes the most. Hint, it's probably a truck. They shouldn't have put in the truck. They should have gone, hint, it's not what you think. Okay, finally, viral videos. If you want to boost shareability, there are several things you can do. Number 1 is to use nostalgia.
You might not remember us, but we met in the 90s. We are members of Generation Y, as in yin-yang. Yo-yo. Life moved a little slower. Discs were square. Desktop folders had personality. Extra storage space was just a zipper away. There was only one social network, but most of your friends died of dysentery. The only thing buzzing in your pocket was a pet. Until that died too. But at least the troll was still a friend. Lunch was a puzzle, not a picture. You were pumping jams, water, shoes. You didn't have to worry about a news feed full of farm animals. You were busy feeding wild animals. A haircut didn't cost $60. It cost 4 minutes. You really had nothing to lose. Unless, of course, you were playing for keeps. The future was bright. You grew up. So did we.
Right, so that advert created a sense of nostalgia, right? Yes, yes, okay. The only problem is that they associate the brand with the nostalgia because it's like nostalgia, 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 Internet Explorer, which means nostalgia, you belong in the past, we're not going to use you because you haven't caught up. So you've got to be careful to associate the right emotion with the punchline. So the second thing to boost shareability is mirror your audience. You know, I was saying earlier about communicating persuasively, the language that you use, the gestures, the way that you dress. Who do you think that this advert is targeting?
Limbs, things are perched and not pinned. Nicely done.
The boys love it. They are up there day and night.
Well, that might be because you overlooked one thing.
What?
It looks into your neighbor's window.
Oh, boy.
Hello, this is Cosmos.
Boys! I'm gonna get the hose.
Home insurance with do-it-yourself tips? That's Allstate Home Insurance. Great protection plus...
Right, so who do you think that was targeting? Who was the audience for that Allstate insurance? Dads, right. I delivered that talk in Google, and I kid you not, 70% of the audience, at least, were males wearing check shirts of that age. I was like, who do you think this is targeting? They're like, I was like, how many of you are wearing check shirts? How many of you have young children? How many of you think that this might be targeting you? It was. They didn't realize it. Most people are not particularly conscious of these things. Third and final thing, make it funny.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is
That was a yes.
DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, Pop-Up. Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
All right, so did anyone notice the book that the dad was reading while his kid shaved his head? It was The Lean Startup. So things like that, you can mirror your audience in tiny little ways, and that makes it even more funny. Okay, so I hope that was a really quick but somewhat useful whistle-stop tour. Key takeaways. If you are writing copy or selecting images or creating videos, you have to make sure that you know who you're targeting. Then you have to use web psychology to optimize whatever it is that you're doing, your process, and then elicit emotions in your users, but be very specific about what emotions you want them to associate with you. Those are the references. If you want to know more, there's a whole free course that you can take. And you can tweet me at the website, and I will see you at drinks. Thank you for your attention. Do you have time for questions?